that in my said profession that I have been respected because, as you all have said, I'm a 2%, which means not only do you need me, you want me, and you do need me. So
at the same time, I think that there are ways in which we can promote value into this field so that educators can truly be who they want to be, because that's not the space that we're in. And so I seek and I sought to achieve this journey in which I was going to be someone who was serving. And still to this day, even though I'm not in the classroom, I have to redefine what that looks like for me.
Welcome to Daily Ed Talk, where we engage in provoking discussions, all things education. So what pushed you further into this whole educational degree or journey?
And I just had to go back to what Bryson was saying. He said something that was very powerful to me. He said, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know who I want to be. And I think that in a lot of what we do as people in general is we're constantly pushed to fulfill these other desires and what society deems as being successful. Mm-hmm. And I think that for so long, that's what is the light for you. That's what you're chasing after. But I think that when I wanted to become an educator, that's when I reached that point of, well, how am I going to define success for myself? And I think that there are different spaces in which you have that when you're growing up, but being able to truly reflect on it and be able to own your definition of success is something that we need to start having conversations about with kids from a young age, because this shouldn't be that I get to college and I'm defining what that is. It should be in elementary school, being able to see the value in an educator, being able to see the value in, and I'm not saying this to undergird the career, the profession, but a mailman or a mailwoman or a garbage person, being able to, whatever you want to be able to do, define that for yourself. We have to get away from pushing things onto people, because that's the space that we've been conditioned to be in, that the only way that you're going to make it is if you're making a lot of money and as if you're in that career. But how is that fulfilling for you? And at what cost? Who are you seeking to please? And so I think that that's really what really propelled me to want to pursue education. Was I realized that I wanted to be serving my community. And granted, the goal was to eventually get back to California. Not back there yet. But my goal was to really be an advocate for serving students, because there's only one commonality that exists between every person in this world, and it's education. And regardless of whether we like it or not, I think that that's what we need to start to truly have conversations about, is the fact that education is the key. It's literally the only key that everyone has some type of experience with. And so for me, I literally am on this charge, this mission to really uplift educator voice and value it. Because once we start to value this profession, I think that our whole world will change. But it's then and only then that we'll actually be able to create communities of folks who actually care about one another, and be able to have conversations about why teachers want to reach self-actualization as well, right? Teachers, it's not okay. We don't have to be in the classroom for 50 years and then retire. That doesn't necessarily need to be the case. Sometimes, you want to serve your community, and don't get me wrong, I don't think that education needs to be this gateway career that you pop in and pop out of. But at the same time, I think that there are ways in which we can promote value into this field so that educators can truly be who they want to be, because that's not the space that we're in. And so I seek and I sought to achieve this journey in which I was going to be someone who was serving. And still to this day, even though I'm not in the classroom, I had to redefine what that looks like for me, because I felt so bad leaving the classroom. But at the same time, I knew that my students weren't getting what they deserved. And so I wanted to approach trying to create solutions to this education system in a different way. And I knew that the same effects that I was having in the classroom, even though that they were vast effects and major effects, and I was making great relationships, who was it truly benefiting in the long run if my students were being done a disservice? And so I think that throughout this last year of me not being in the classroom, I feel like I've reached a new level of self-actualization to where I'm able to have conversations which came the creation of where I'm a co-host of the podcast and like working on other education ventures. And I don't think that you truly can see all of that when you are worried about all of the different aspects of what goes into the classroom. And people don't see that either. Like, it's a lot that goes into teaching. Like, it is not for the faint of heart. It is a 24/7 job. People, like, I felt like I was always on call. Like that, I kid you not. I'd be in class, me being the student. Oh, sorry, professor, I gotta step out. Gotta go to the hospital. Like, those are the experiences that I had. And people don't see that. They just see, oh my goodness, you get to have your summer vacation, or you get to have, you're paid throughout the summer. Like, no, that's not how it works. Like, you don't see the amount of hours that we really churn and the amount of support that we have to give to our kids. And don't get me wrong, like, yes, we love it, but I think that at a certain point, educators have to ask themselves this question is, who's looking out for me? Mm-hmm. And that question does not come up enough. And I think that that's the reason why I'm very, my new mission is making sure that educators are looking out for themselves, because too often are we put on the front line and no one's asking that question of, well, what do you need in this moment? And actually valuing your perspective.
For me, how I got into education, I remember when I was 16, and there was a summer camp that was hiring, and I was like, oh, they're paying $10 an hour. I was like in like 10th, 11th grade, like my friends were like working at McDonald's or wherever. I was like, $10, this is perfect. And I just remember, and this is something I always go back to, and this is where I realized like education is for me. When I was waking up at like 6 in the morning to go to that camp, it did not feel like work. I was able to work from like 7 to 5 and still have so much energy and joy and bring my full self to that camp every day. And that's how I feel like teaching and doing summer camps and doing programs. And that's like literally like, I feel like education brings me alive. Like it speaks to me. I feel alive with it. And it's just.
I'd have to agree. I had this Nelson Mandela quote in my office, and it says, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." And it kind of sounds like, I think that kind of culminates a lot of the things that you all have said. I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I always wanted to be a teacher. It's just that I was just so nervous about again, as I had prior said, the financial aspect. And teaching, as Shahad said, is not a respected profession. And we've got to do something to change that narrative. You know, we educate the next doctors, lawyers, engineers, preachers, teachers, you know, all these different professions and occupations that are held in high regard or well respected. We train all of these. And we've got to get to a place where educators specifically are respected. And I feel that in my said profession that I have been respected because, as you all had said, I'm a 2%, which means not only do you need me, you want me, and you do need me, you know? So I feel that when we talk about respect, I have always received that respect, you know, within my classroom, particularly because I did teach in rural areas and low income areas. And both of these areas did not have the representation of Black male educators. And I knew how important that was, not only for Black students as a whole, but primarily African American and Black boys. And you know, that they need us. I have many students that call me pops and dad. And you know, it's that type of relationship. I thrive on those relationships. That means so much to me, that I know that there are young men, Black young men, who are looking to me as an example, who do not have a father figure that's present. And I love that. And I tell you, you have to be very, very careful. More so, I look at people not as people, but I look at them as souls, number one. And then I look at them I say, okay, what is my assignment with this individual? And I know that my assignment is to be an educator. And I'm grateful to have been in this profession. And again, I go back to this idea of pursuing that doctorate. I think that you know, a lot of times I say, you know, I want to pursue that doctor for myself, but I really think it's for those to which I serve. that I wanted to teach them that you can obtain this. This is an obtainable goal. To both Black boys, hey, you can do this. I had a student, I taught 8th grade my last year in the classroom, and my son, he calls me Pops, is now in high school. He plays football. And I got a message on Instagram, and I was like, who is this? And it was him. And he was like, hey, can I call you really quick? And so he video called me, and he was showing me, that he got a part-time job working at Sonic. And he was so excited for that part-time job. I mean, he was so excited. He said, Dad, I just wanted my own. I just wanted, to have, my aunts want to work. I'm not doing anything. And to think that he called me. And I think that just shows the level of impact that we have, not only as teachers, but as Black male teachers on this new generation. And I'm so grateful for this field. I'm grateful for the profession, in that I have the ability to return the favor and to serve another population to which I know needs that service.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into the question that I have. When was the first time you experienced your Black male teacher? Like when you walked into the building and you had a Black male teacher?
Never. Never. I never had a K through 12 teacher that was Black, a core content teacher. There was a teacher that taught special ed, but I'm not in that population, so I never had him as an instructor. And so that is another reason why I said, hey, if I want to be a teacher, I need to be a core content teacher. And so I've taught social studies, but I did not have my first Black instructor until Dr. Dewey Clayton at the University of Louisville. But K through 12, I did not have any Black male teachers.
Yeah, I got to echo those remarks. I did not have a Black male as an educator for my K through 12 experience. And I think that people don't realize that plays into us, like our trajectory as students a lot. Like you not being able to see yourself in front of you is something that is like, can come at a significant detriment. And I didn't realize the impact that it had on me until I got out of California. And it wasn't until my freshman year at American University that Dr. Stephen Taylor, that was my first Black professor. And like literally, had I not had that experience, I'd sit here and question like, would I have ever, like, I just think about all of the different aspects of education. And I know that you are so impressionable in the K through 12 period. And so like the fact that, and I'm fortunate to have come from a two-parent household where both my mother and my father were around. And so I had a consistent male figure in my life. But I question, had I not had that, like what would my trajectory have been? Like, let's just keep it real. The odds are stacked against us before we even enter the classroom. And at 3rd grade, if we're not doing something that's off the charts at that point, something else is being designed to facilitate that transition from us being in the real world to somewhere else to take the numbers and to take our vote away. So I think that we need to really start having conversations around like what we can do to get more Black male educators in the classroom, because the data speaks for itself. It says that same race teachers as their students, we know that the trajectory of those students are far better than us having white educators. And so I think that until we start having these real, honest, brutal conversations that have needed to be had for the longest time, I think that we're doing ourselves a detriment. And I think we know, like, I always have conversations about Brown v. Board. Like, who did that actually help? Like, what was the true goal there? And I think that in a way, until we can have a real honest conversation about the history of that in itself, we won't be able to unpack all of the other culturally relevant pedagogy and those types of conversations to make sure that we're truly meeting kids where they're at. So it's unfortunate, but no Black teacher from my K through 12 experience.
So for me, I actually had two. One in 5th grade, Mr. Terrell, and then one in high school, Mr. Taylor. So Mr. Taylor was actually a football coach, and he taught math. So that was kind of like, unofficially, I kind of wanted him to always like be my mentor, but I never, like, I had like a longing for it. Like, hey, like I looked up to him. I wanted him to like tell me like how he did, like how he got to where he was. And but it just never happened. But that's why I think now, like I mentor my students a lot and reach out to them and give back to them, because I really longed for it and I didn't have it. So even though Mr. Taylor was my first Black male educator, but we didn't really have a strong relationship, and I didn't feel that there was a bond there. But I definitely looked up to him and never really told him or had that connection with him.
For me, oh no, go ahead, John.
Sorry, I think that Bert had said something that was really profound. I think there also may be a generational thing as well. And the age thing, I had my mother and father had a male teacher, to which they also, a Black male teacher, to which they also said that they had no relationship with, that they saw him and they knew him well in our community. But, I think that in some generations, particularly in the older generation, that they were also trying to figure out, okay, I've got to do this. I can't have a relationship with these group of students because it may be seen favoritism, or, I have to try to keep that separate, and I think that may be something that we see with a lot of older teachers, particularly teachers that we may have grown up with or our parents may have come up with. But it's weird that you say that, because I think that the male teachers, the Black male teachers that they said that they had, that they really didn't have a relationship, and that was because I've got to keep that separated. While I want to help, I can't seem like I may be showing favoritism or something like that as well. But I've got to get to a space to, I just thought that was profound what you said that, and that really triggered something with me.
Jahad, do you have something?
Yeah, I just was going to talk about the value of a bond. And I think that's when you're in school, and school is something that you're doing for your K through 12 experience for however many hours a day, and you don't see yourself consistently in these spaces for however many hours a day. And then you go home and you're watching TV, but you see yourself represented there. And so like, there's a clear, distinct connection between why we value certain professions. And I think that until we really grapple with that and have these conversations around like that bond, those are the bonds that we're forming. And it's because we're not seeing, how often do we see Black doctors like in our communities that we're being reared in? And what types of conversations are we having about the billions of other professions that are even available to us? And like, for instance, like how in the world did I get into talent acquisition? That was not, you don't go to American University to major in anything that remotely relates to talent. But being able for me to understand that and see that, like one of the biggest things that I love to do is talking to people and hearing their story and taking their story to allow them to see the value in themselves. And let's unpack your strengths and weaknesses. But had I not had that experience when I was recruiting for Teach for America, I would not have had the opportunity to then go and do these types of things. Yes, I know. Recruiting for Teach for America.
He says it. He's like so disgusting.
It's just like at the same time, I'm appreciative for that experience, because I think that it's about exposure. It's about opportunities. And had I not had that exposure and that opportunity to literally recruit, I wouldn't have known and been exposed to this. But I think it really is about us trying to allow kids are so smart. They're so smart. And we take a lot of their voice away from them because we think we know what is best, when in reality, they know what's best for them. And all we have to do is listen in to what they're saying, and they'll tell you exactly what they want to do, exactly how they need to learn. And it may be very unconventional, but let me tell you, like, some of the best ideas that I've gotten from the classroom came from my students.
Yeah, so my next question was kind of like, what are the benefits of us being in that classroom space? And I recently did a video just talking about my experience in middle school. We all have that perception of middle school as this very emotional stage in a child's life. They're hormonal, they're friends one day, they're not, they're going through this stage of learning who they are. So this perception of, wow, you teach middle school, power to you, I'm praying for you every day. And I got that a lot because, middle school, I love it. I love middle school. I want to teach high school just to see the complexities of that. But I love middle school, and it's because I can have those conversations that Jahad is saying and build those bonds, because they still look to you as this higher figure of, you're an educator, I must listen. sometimes on a high school level, they're like, I'm here for the class, leave me alone. Let's get the, let me get the grade and I'm next, to the next class. So I have these conversations with my kids at least twice a year. Like, put the books away, let's just talk. Let's just figure out what's going on in your life and how I can be successful. And I typically do it with the 8th grade class because I'm, at a private school. They're transitioning either to another private or public school. So that experience is kind of nerve-wracking for them. They're going from a smaller school of maybe 200 to a 3,000, kid school. And you just have to have these connections and these bonds with them. So when you use the word bond, that really triggered my next question. And then I didn't experience a K-12 core teacher as a Black male. I believe in kindergarten, I had a music teacher that was Black. He was only there that 1 year. And then I think I only had him once a week. So I really didn't see him unless a school had an event or something like that. But yeah, I didn't have one. But yeah, if we can talk about that benefit, what is that benefit of you being in that classroom setting? I know we're not all in the classroom at the time, but what is that benefit of being in the classroom?
Oh, go ahead.
I always get so tickled when people talk about middle school. I always tell people, you want to know what hell looks like? You go into middle school cafeteria during lunchtime. But I think there is an extreme benefit, and I will keep saying, and I love this word that we're not using this bond word, relationship. I that's at the core of my teaching. When I train teachers, I always tell them that teaching is about 80% relationship building. We're expected to be experts in our set content, which is 20%, but students don't learn from people they don't like. And so in order to be effective, you have to have these relationships and have to nurture these bonds. And I find it so empowering when I can bond and form a relationship with another Black male that I know is looking to me. And they do see us as heroes, particularly in middle school and elementary school. I taught 2 years of high school, and believe it or not, I taught seniors who have never had a Black male teacher that were taller than me, because I'm only 5'9", and they're like 5'11", 6'2", going on the football field calling me pops. They look for those type of relationships, and to have that type of bond. I still talk to those students. My first group of students just graduated this past year from high school, and so I still talk to those freshmen that I had when they were my children. And I think that they need that person to look to. I think someone else had said, I'm a product of a 2-parent household. So my father, I love my daddy. And I have a good relationship with my father. But I understand that in this generation, a lot of people are being reared in 1-parent households, single-parent households, and that's typically the mother. And so having a relationship, whether it be a single-parent household or a 2-parent household with that Black male in particular, for me, is a very empowering thing, and I don't take it lightly, and it's something that should be treasured and nurtured.
For me, I feel like the impact that I have with my students is especially like the demographic and area that I teach in. And then my background, how I was raised, how I grew up, where I feel like I can relate to the students a lot more. Just understanding the complexities of what they're going through, as far as like last night I had my aunt come over or my aunt's family to come over and take a shower or something like it's been stories where my students will come to me and tell me, and like me being able to understand where they're coming from and how they feel. I feel like having that impact on them and that understanding allows me to, one, have a stronger bond with them, but two, to help them out, like, talk them through, okay, this may be a tough time. I had a similar situation. This is what I did. This is how I navigated it. This is where I'm at now. And use these experiences, and also empowering them and telling them that they need to use these experiences and the things that they're going through right now to push them to the next level, because a lot of people don't have these experiences, and it just makes them a better person.
So yeah, I definitely just, so for one, I feel bad because I'm like, I need to say shout out to Black women, because I really do feel like all of what, like in some way, shape, or form, like the rearing, and like we do need to get into, even as Black male educators, I think that we have to start having a bigger conversation around like protecting Black women, because the Black woman's voice is just, it's consistently undervalued, and Black women are not protected. And so I think that that's one thing I wanted to say before I move forward. But in addition to that, I think that a lot of the ways that I know how to even relate to a student is because of Black women. It's because of the coddling, the nurturing that mothers or that Black women have just showed me, and that just became like an intrinsic value that I started to exhibit. And so I'll be honest, I remember one time I was teaching and one of my students called me mom. And of course it was accidental, but to him, that's the figure that he has in his life that's been consistent, and someone who shows that nurturing. And so I reflected on that night. It wasn't something that he was trying to be disrespectful. It was something that he was trying to tell me he values me, he sees me. And for him to be putting me on that pedestal, it just really made me appreciate what I've learned up until today, but B, the fact that he values me and sees me as such. And so I think that thinking about how we as Black male educators can really protect and make sure that Black students are thinking about the real world implications about what happens outside of the classroom. And that's why I really appreciated what you said, Darren, about putting the books away. Because I can tell you there were so many different times in which I was like, okay, you know what? Like, we need to have a real world conversation. And I'm sorry we're not getting to Eureka today. Because the thing is that you will be perceived as something that's completely different when you leave this classroom. And it's so sad, and it frustrates me to see that the types of things that I saw in the classroom, and to have to tell my student, like, Mr. Jahai cares about you and he loves you, but you doing this outside of these four walls is unacceptable. And they're not going to take the same amount of patience that I had. They're not going to be as flexible as I've been. They're not going to give you any type of supplemental support. They just see you as a Black boy. They just see you as a Black girl. And you need to be very mindful and cognizant and aware of that. And it's so unfortunate that those are the types of conversations that I have to have, but it's the reality of the situation. And so that's the reason why that relationship that Bryson was speaking to is so important. And that's why I completely and holistically agree in meeting your student where they are at. Like, I literally can tell you about a time in which I did not teach for the first, I want to say 3 to 6 months of me learning a new student, because that student had transitioned from school to school to school to school to school. And the student was in the 5th grade.
Wow.
And hadn't been at one school consistently for 5 to 6 years. So I understand why you're not ready to sit in front of me and learn content, because you haven't been able, you don't know who I am. You don't feel safe in this environment. You don't feel like you can be yourself, be who you want to be who you are. And it's like, these are all of the different elements. So sometimes you have to be like, you know what, I got to put this curriculum away. No, we're not going to be able to get to where we want to be based off of these societal standards of, what's the park data say? You need to be growing X amount of points. Sometimes, I'm sorry, I'll be very transparent. I don't care about that. I want to make sure that you're going to be able to be a human being. These test scores don't tell you anything. I want to make sure that when Mr. Jahad is not here, he's not around, that you can go to the store and pay for something, and you can have a conversation, and if you need help, you can ask for help. Those are the things that I'm focused on. And so I think that that's really why, like, I've been very passionate about having these relationships with my students, and why Black male educators are so important, and Black educators in general are so important, is because that's a value that we just have inherently. And honestly, these white people need to invest in it, point blank, period.
And then I got a lot to say what you said, John. And then not invest in it, and I'll say this and I'll get off of it, not invest in it and say, let me go get a degree in urban education. that's not an investment. Like, let me go get my PhD in urban ed so I know how to teach Black and brown kids. That's not really my investment. You need to be creating these bonds in these relationships. But then when you also talk about the Black female or the Black woman teacher in education, it made me think, how many Black female teachers did I encounter? My whole K-8 experience was Black female teachers. And that's where I got that, nurture, and that let me, sit down, talk to me, what's going on type of experience. And I believe I've had that same experience where a child has come up to me and be like, oh, mom. And I'm just like, hey, what's up? I just, play it off and keep rolling. And that's, like you say, they see you as that figure that they can come to and talk to. I'm telling you, I've never had a planning period or a lunch period where a student was not coming to my room because they just need to talk about what they were going through with their friends at lunch. And I'm like, okay, it's my planning, but let me talk to you. And that's just the importance I figured that I had to have in my classroom, and just having this open relationship. And when Alex talked about earlier with the shift in how you can relate to your teacher, like Bryson said, his parents didn't kind of have that connection with that Black male in their school, or you tried to in your high school and didn't happen. My recent research that I'm trying to do and pursue later on is just this multi-generational classroom or educational workspace, and how it has shaped our minds to be successful. So I'm looking at how baby boomers, that generation, and how their upbringing and how they act right now, how it has shaped us as millennials, because most of our parents are baby boomers, or they're on that later edge of the Generation X. But then how Generation X has been upreared and how they live their life, how it has affected the students that we're teaching right now. And it has shaped and molded how I teach in the classroom, because Generation X, they're like, I want to make my own path. I'm not following what my parents did or forced me to do. I want to make my own rules. I want to make my own plan. And that's how the kids we're teaching now is like, Mr. Daly, I don't care nothing about a uniform. But I have to stop and say, okay, we want you to look a certain way right now, because like you say, when you leave these four walls, if you're not looking a certain way, the perception is going to be totally different than what you're giving off. So I just love that conversation of bond, relationship, and all of that. One question I do want to ask, I'm trying to look at the list here that I have, and we've touched on a lot of them in the midst of our conversation, so we might have to do a part 2 later on. But thinking of ourselves and, as we were teachers or currently teachers, how do we expose our students, and predominantly our Black male students, because all of us here have more than one degree. How do we pour into that population of, right now, I want instant money, I want a career that's going to be sustainable, maybe for a certain amount of time, but I'm rich. How do we pour into this generation coming up, that education is a thing to have and is a thing to obtain, but it's okay to also have your personal goals and all of that as well? Like, how do we do that?
I go back to the individual that I was just talking about that just started working at Sonic, and he was so excited to start that job, to get his own money. But I quickly told him, I said, that is fine. I want that for you. Please make sure that you do your due diligence this summer. I said, however, when school times comes, let that be your priority, because essentially your priority needs to be your education, because like that money, like that job, that can be taken away. Mm-hmm. And education cannot be.
Right.
And you work hard for that. That degree that you earn, that paper that you earn, that diploma, it cannot be stripped from you. So I always try to take it from that angle, and let them know the importance of education, and that it is a gateway and a pathway to success. And I think that giving them the understanding that this isn't something that is just for the here and now, but something that will benefit them on down the road, on down, that they'll have payday after a while. And so I try my best to take it from that experience, and take it from that perspective to let them know that this is something that can be attained, can be achieved. And while it can be attained and achieved, it cannot be taken away.
Yeah, I think that that's a great question, because I really, now that I do have 2 degrees, that's the reason why I started this conversation with talking about being able to define your definition of success and being able to understand what it's going to take for you to get to your definition of success. And I think in a lot of ways, capitalism has tied us to things that don't actually represent success for us. But those are the things that are put on to the pedestal. Money. There is a certain amount of money that you can have that can give you internal happiness, to where you may not be in the position and predicament of me being thousands upon $1,000 in education debt. I could have gone to a community college, and I could have valued my community college experience and then transferred to a university and paid half the price that I paid. And being able to be comfortable with that, as opposed to striving for someone else's defined definition of success. And so I really have just gravitated towards this idea of making sure that students know whatever you want to do. I completely agree with Bryson. Education is something that you need to value, and then everything else will fall into line after that. But I'm also of the other frame of thought in putting students in, if you want to do something that's a vocational program, so be it. Know that there are plumbers that are making more money than me, and that probably will make more money than I ever will make in my life. And that's something that we need to be having conversations about. We do not need to be diminishing these other professions. And those are trust me, let's have a conversation. When you buy your first house, let me be the first to tell you that you being a plumber is going to be a lot more resourceful and nifty than you being a talent acquisition manager. Okay? And valuing that. Those are things that we need to have conversations around and about, and try not, I don't know, why we've been striving away from this whole vocational and trade school thing. But it's something that can be done. Apprenticeships, those are things that we need to start investing in and allowing students to go down that pipeline if that's something that they're interested in and they're passionate about. Not everyone wants to go get a 4-year degree. And honestly, if we really have a true conversation about what your undergrad experience was and what you learned in undergrad, or if it was relevant or applicable to the career, the profession that you're in today, let's have conversations about that. How much did I learn in my undergrad program that was applicable to me being in education or being a teacher? And of course, there's definitely bits and pieces, but can you say that you gave me all of what I needed to be in the classroom? No, I say this all the time. There's nothing that you can do to prepare an educator to be an educator, because you just literally are pulling everything. You are the doctor, the lawyer, the teacher, you name it, you are it. And so I think that that's really what we need to have a conversation about, is making sure that students are able to define their definition of success, and educators, parents, community investing in that.
Yeah, I definitely agree 100% with that. So things right now are kind of very different, right? So a lot of people are with the whole COVID and everything, people are working or were working in jobs and a 9-to-5 or depending on other people to provide income for them, right? Or just to provide, income for them, right? But when Jihad, you touched on it, I think what we have to instill in our students is to not to understand what success is for them, to define that and to follow that path. Because there are a lot of people that I've gone to school with that are now having side hustles that they're turning into their full time. So my one friend, he was he went to school, public relations. He wanted to be in the industry and all of that. And now he's a handyman, turning his handyman into business into a renovation business. But what stood out the most to me was that he said, I can see myself doing this forever, and I would literally do this for free. And he is so that just light bulb went off for me. this is what we have to push our students to see and do and learn and feel at an early age. Not $100, like $1 million or a doctor, a lawyer, but find out what your passion is and figure out how to make that benefit you monetarily and to live and feel and be free, you know?
Yes, I really enjoyed this conversation. I don't want it to end, but I know time is kind of like a thing here. But I do want to first say thank you for having this conversation, or just this little tidbit of a conversation. Of course, we're going to have to do this again, but I do appreciate all of this conversation. It has benefited me. I hope it has benefited you as well. Just to see everyone's experience is different. Like I said before, sometimes you're in that environment of where you're the only Black male. And sometimes you have to defend or deflect. And why you have to defend or deflect is because you can't speak on everyone's experience. And all four of us have similarities, but there are some differences. And that's what made us become these astounding, Black male teachers that we are, and educators and activists and all of that. So I just appreciate this conversation. I do want to end on just talk to us about what you're currently doing. Give us a plug if you want us to follow something that you're doing. Plug that in there, or something to motivate the viewers. Just give us a little tidbit, something like that.
So thank you so much, honestly, to all of you for being here today. This was a great conversation. I look forward to doing this again and forward to more conversations, because we definitely are not valued in this field, and we should be. But all that to say, my name is Shahab Broussard again. I am one of the co-hosts of the Reformist Pipeline podcast, which can be found on all of the popular podcasting streaming platforms. And so go ahead and go to Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast from, go ahead and download it and subscribe, please. And then also you can find me on Instagram at HADYHAD, Hadi Had. And so all DC educators, feel free to hit me up. I love sharing resources, and I love being some type of an information bank, because there's a lot of free money out here for DC educators specifically, and I would love to give that to you. So please hit me up. I'd love to chat further.
Again, I'm Alex Bird. Currently working on going to get my PhD or EDD, not sure yet. I've been looking at a couple schools, but I definitely feel like furthering my education is my next thing. I don't know if I want to do administration or like in a school, but I definitely want to keep impacting my students and making the best for them in situation.
So I think Darren said, what are we currently doing now? I'm not doing nothing. I'm celebrating, because I am done. I am celebrating. So again, I'm Bryce McGuire, Dr. Bryce McGuire. Thank you, Jesus. And I just completed that. And so I'm learning just to celebrate where you are. And that's what I'm currently doing right now. And I do also have a podcast, me and two other friends here in Nashville, Navigating the Now. It can also be found on major platforms, Apple Music, Google Play, all that good stuff. So again, I'm enjoying life. I'm just enjoying being here. I'm enjoying being healthy. I'm enjoying being sane. So I'm just glad to be here. And thanks again. I thank each of you all so much. This has been wonderful. And thanks for the invite, dude. I certainly enjoyed myself, and I'm enjoying waiting and anticipating for next time.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, so this is Daily Ed Talk, where we just talk about provoking conversations or discussions, anything education. Yeah, see you next time.